Welcome to Seahawks Forever. I'm Dan. Appreciate you tuning in. As we get closer to the NFL draft, now just a month away, you've all done 1,000 mock drafts, right? Well, if you haven't, you know that I have, and I share many of them on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. I share many of them on the show, and you know that I like to work different scenarios. Recently, we looked at what it would mean value-wise if the Seahawks were to go offensive line, like so many of you want them to in the first round, versus waiting a little bit because there's so much depth in that class. How does it affect the rest of the board, and how do you like the end results? Well, today, because it is Mock Draft Monday after all, we're going to do that, but with the quarterback position. Do the Seahawks even draft a quarterback this year now that Sam Darnold is in town? They swapped Geno Smith out. They signed Sam Darnold. They get younger and cheaper at the position. But how strongly do the Seahawks feel that Darnold could be the long-term answer at the position and be their franchise quarterback? We may get some indications of that on how they handle that position in this draft. Now, I am higher than many, if not most, on this quarterback class. I think there's some starters in this class if you put them in the right situation, surround them with enough support. Does John Schneider finally put his money where his mouth is? We've heard him say it a million times. I learned from Ron Wolf in Green Bay. Take a quarterback every year. You either hit on one or they become an asset. You can trade him for draft picks. Green Bay had a lot of success doing that. John Schneider has taken exactly 2 quarterbacks in drafts since becoming the GM here 15 years ago. One, of course, famously Russell Wilson. The other one, Alex Magoo, who did win an MVP award in the UFL, and now he is playing receiver. So not the most storied history there. So does he take one this year to pair with Darnold and maybe hedge against Darnold not being the long-term answer? That's what we're going to do today. I'm going to do 2 mock drafts, one with a quarterback, one without, and then you get to decide which one you like better.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Once again, the show brought to you by the folks at Doer, built for doing. There it is, spelled right there, D-U-E-R. That's important to remember that. We'll come back. There will be a quiz, a lifestyle apparel for every occasion. My favorite clothing manufacturer. They have hoodies. They have joggers, as you can see here, premium t-shirts, Henleys, button-up moleskin shirts, really, really soft. One of my favorite things to wear when I'm just lounging around the house or even going out on a date. And these bad boys right here, these stretch performance jeans are my go-to. They move with you. They have 20% stretch. Even here in the heat in Arizona, where it's pushing 90 here in March, they are made from breathable material, and so they're comfortable. You can wear them on a hot day. You can wear them when you're lounging around the house or when you're out doing errands, because they are also built tough. They are built for doing. And right now you can get 20% off your first order from Doer for being a viewer of this program. Go to shopdoer.com/forever. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/forever for 20% off your first order. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It's one of the best ways you can really support the show because it lets the algorithm know that you like what you're seeing. You can also hit that bell button, and that way you'll be notified anytime there's new content. And also just share the show. Post it on your Twitter feed if you would like. That helps out as well. And if you don't follow me on Twitter, please do, at Seahawks Forever. All the other ways that you can support the show are linked down below in the description. All right, so let's get into this. You know how much I love to do mock drafts. And as I said, this is Mock Draft Monday. I owe you. It's an obligation. I have to give you mock drafts on Monday. Sometimes we do those live. Sometimes we do them with guests. Sometimes we work scenarios. And that's what we're going to do here today. The quarterback thing is fascinating to me this year, more so than it ever has been. Like, I think we were all blindsided by the Geno Smith news. I know I was. I was literally in this exact same spot. I had just finished a day's worth of work doing a bunch of content, and I was turning off my monitors here. And then a former coworker of mine, who doesn't even text me that often, so I wondered, what's up, texted me and said, hey, just in case you're not online, Geno Smith just got traded. To which then I had to turn both the monitors on and sit back down and do an emergency reaction show. And then to quickly pivot to Sam Darnold, who had such a great year last year, really seemed to resurrect his career in a very, very similar manner that Geno Smith did, although at a much younger age. So, while I do believe there is a good chance, certainly a chance, if you don't agree with me that there's a good chance, that Sam Darnold could be the answer. He could be the quarterback here for the next 10 years. I've heard and seen a lot of Matt Hasselbeck comps, and I think that's pretty fair. Like, Hasselbeck was a damn good quarterback for 10 years, but one that throughout his tenure here, the fans would debate. Some didn't like him, unless you have Patrick Mahomes, right? Or Josh Allen. Most fans of teams that don't have those quarterbacks have issues with their quarterback because they're not those guys. So unless you have one of those top 7 or 8 guys, you're always kind of wondering what else is out there, right? When I first heard the news that Sam Darnold was indeed going to be the answer here, or at least the option that they pivoted to, my immediate first thought was, okay, pair it now with a quarterback from this class. Protect yourself, layer it. So if Sam Darnold, if he's one and done, if last year was a one-hit wonder and Kevin O'Connell found some magic potion with him and he's just never able to replicate that type of performance, and he looks more like the player that we saw in New York and even in Carolina where he had some good moments, but he's still, pretty much a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception rate down there, that, hey, maybe you take a shot on one of these other guys and start that clock, right? So that if Darnold doesn't work out, and we still haven't seen the official breakdown of the contract, we still don't know for sure what the first year cap hit's going to look like. But indications are more and more that it's very heavily front weighted, which the Seahawks had a unique opportunity to do this year because of all the cap space saved by trading Geno and DK and releasing some other players. They can afford to take a bigger cap hit this year in the event that it just doesn't work. And then they can move on next year. So why not pair him then with a player from this class so that if it doesn't work out with him, that maybe you already have his successor in hand. But then as I got to get more familiar with the situation and read and listen to all the analysis and John and Mike and how they talk about him and then all the press conferences, everything, all the things that you guys have done, I'm not so sure I feel that way now, that it's a necessity. But as John said at the Combine, when talking again about why he hasn't drafted a quarterback since Alex Magoo, that he says the board just hasn't spoken to him yet, and he hopes that it does. And that's where I'm at now. Like, if you can take one of these guys and it doesn't, the opportunity cost isn't too daunting, that you're not passing up a guy that could be a really, really valuable piece on the defensive line for you, for instance, because you wanted to take a quarterback, a guy who might never play for you because you just went out and gave $100 million to a guy that you think's pretty good. And so sometimes I'll do drafts that I like, where there's a quarterback involved, and sometimes I don't. So I did 2 before. We're not going to do them live. I did them ahead of time. And no trades. And when I tried to do as much as possible, because I think for the purposes of this exercise, this made the most sense, is if the same player was available in both drafts, I tried to take him. And I was able to do that on my first 2 tries. So the first few players that I take in these 2 drafts are the same, because I want to show you how taking a quarterback might change then the rest, like the snowball effect, the rest of the draft. What do you miss out on? What opportunities do you not have now to add at a certain position, at a certain level of talent, before a certain position group might fall off a ledge? So here's the first one, and this is without a quarterback. No trades, no anything, right? And a couple of disclaimers here right off the top. This is not, the purposes of this exercise is not to debate every single pick and what choices I made in every single round. I know there's a bunch of you out there right now probably screaming at the screen, why aren't you taking an offensive lineman in the first round? and I've said it 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000,000 more between now and the draft. Interior offensive line is one of the deepest classes in this draft. Some of these other position groups, while they're good through the first 100 picks, fall off a cliff. And so if you want a defensive tackle that's dynamic, not just a space eater, you want a receiver, you want a corner, you better take those guys in those first 100 picks, because it's slim pickings after that. Whereas offensive line, and I think you'll see here in these two drafts I did, especially on the interior, very, very deep all the way through the 5th and 6th round. So it doesn't make sense to go offensive line in the first round just because you need one so bad, or at least that's the perception, when it costs you a better player at another position. And this is a perfect example of that. Malachi Starks might not be there at 18. He's a top 15 player for me. But because I think there's some other needs, teams are going to be climbing over each other for quarterbacks potentially, climbing over each other for the top tackles, some of the defensive players, that he could slip. Also, the fact that his testing at the combine wasn't as explosive as people expected, but it doesn't matter because the tape is that good. And I know a bunch of you like Nick Emenwari from South Carolina. Another little disclaimer here. I like Starks better. He's a better player. He's a more versatile player, much, much more instinctive player. And if you're saying to yourself, yeah, but Emenwari's the second coming of Cam Chancellor. No, he's not. No, he's not. Watch the tape. He's not the imposing, intimidating presence that Cam Chancellor was. Good player. Wouldn't be mad. Starks is better. And if he's here, I'm taking him all day long. And I think he'll be very, very high on the board too, because I think Mike McDonald would love him. You can play him in the slot. First of all, he's one of those guys that would allow Devin Witherspoon to move to the outside, which is something I'm a proponent of. I'm going to go a little deeper on that in an episode just about that over the next week or so. Keep an eye out for that. But I'd really like that kind of versatility, where you can play him close to the line of scrimmage. You can cover tight ends and running backs and let Devin Witherspoon. I'm telling you, ever since I watched that Jay Gruden interview that he did with Devin about a month ago, he's talking about how he's taking on guards and slamming his body against guards on just about every play. I don't want that for him long term. I'd rather have him on the outside. I think Starks would be a phenomenal addition to this defense. And then guess what? You still get almost the perfect guard for this scheme and for what the Seahawks need right now in Tate Ratledge at 50. He is nasty. He's a mauler. He has a mean streak and an edge to him that nobody else on that line really has. They need that. But he's also athletic enough. He's a perfect scheme fit. He really is. Played on the right side at Georgia. I see no issues with him moving over to the left side, or maybe you just keep him on the right side, because we saw Christian Haynes and Satawa Lamea playing on the left side last preseason, and I thought Haynes looked just as good on the left as he did on the right. So you let those guys compete. But Ratledge is a plug-and-play rookie starter at one of those positions. And then you address the wide receiver position with Elike Omanor from Stanford. He is a true X. I think he's a very complimentary player. Gives you something different than Kupp and JSN. Very smooth route runner, very sure hands. The contested catch highlight reel is one for the books. He's also an outstanding run blocker, a tenacious run blocker. And we know how important that is in this scheme. And then you put him in the same wide receiver room as Cooper Kupp, one of the best to ever do it, and let him get even better at it. So I think he's a great fit. Plus, Doug Baldwin's going to like that pick, don't you think? And then at 82, and this is kind of the range we get into where you're going to start looking at quarterbacks. Well, now we get to take a really, really dynamic defensive tackle, Darius Alexander out of Toledo. He dominated the Senior Bowl the entire week. He's a guy that has some pass rush juice, and he can play the run. His motor never stops. He would be just such a fun player to have next to Byron Murphy. Not that true nose tackle that I know a bunch of you want, but a guy that gives you more than that. And we get to the quarterback a little bit too. That'd be a lot of fun. At 92, we address corner because this is where that ledge kind of starts, and they were falling off quick. So I took Kobe Bryant. We know that he met with the Seahawks at the combine. He's a little slight of frame, 6 foot, about 180, but you wouldn't know it watching the tape. He gets in there, he comes up and he plays the run really well. He's a really feisty defender in man-to-man. Didn't go to the Senior Bowl, went to the Shrine game was really the standout down there the entire week of practice. His ball skills are outstanding. And he says if they draft him, and it gives him 2 Kobe Bryants, that they can call him Mamba. Jack Sawyer's great value at 137. They need edge there. Just talked about that the other day on the show. Go back and watch that. Edge is a huge need, even though some of you don't think it is. Sawyer's a great edge setter, but he's got some pass rush juice, and he's a locker room guy. He's a culture guy. He makes big plays in big moments. He's just a guy you want in your locker room, you want on your team. He's never going to be your best edge player. I don't think he has that Trey Hendrickson type ceiling, but he's going to be a very, very good player for a very, very long time. And at 137, that's about as good as you can hope for. Jalen Conyers, they need a tight end. They need a young tight end, but this guy's versatility is what really makes him stand out. He's done Wildcat quarterback stuff. He's a former quarterback, and he's a little bit built a little bit more like an H-back than some of these tight ends. He's 6'3", 260. Maybe he can fill that fullback role as well. I really like his versatility. And then here's what I was talking about earlier. Clay Webb at 175, unreal. But this is kind of the range he's going in over and over again. And if you look at it and you go, Jacksonville State, small school guy. Now, he went to Georgia his first year, and then he transferred. Before he went to Georgia, he was a top 10 recruit in the country. He was the number 1 rated center in the country. He can play guard and center. For me, that's a priority. I have 2 priorities on day 3 with the offensive line. One is to get a guy that can play guard or center. Webb is one of my favorites. Jackson Slater, the Bellevue kid, who's been on the show, is the other one. And then I want a developmental tackle to add to the mix, a guy that I think can maybe project to be a swing tackle, could play on either side to help protect against Charles Cross ever getting injured, or maybe they can't re-sign him after next year, or they choose not to re-sign Abe Lucas because if he just doesn't come back and he's not Abe Lucas again this year, right? And they don't have enough confidence in that knee to give him a second contract. Jalen Travis is a guy who's long, he's 6'7", 330 pounds, but really good feet. I thought he was really good at the Senior Bowl, and I think he's a guy that can project as a swing tackle and can play both ways. And then Jaquavius Marks out of USC is just kind of the prototypical third down back, outstanding pass catcher, gives you a little something different than what the other guys have. And you have to start thinking about maybe life after Ken Walker, right? He's in the last year of his rookie deal. How much are you going to pay him? Are you going to keep him around? Then you have Charbonnet. The year after him will be in the last year of his rookie deal. So always a good idea, as much as there's attrition and durability issues. Sometimes that position just gets so much punishment. Always good to keep adding running backs to the mix. And it's such a good class. You want to tap into that, right? All right. Now let's take a look at with a quarterback. So first 3 picks are the same: Starks, Ratledge, Io Manor. Then I took Quinn Ewers at 82. Disclaimer: if you don't like Quinn Ewers, it doesn't matter. That's not the purpose of this exercise. In that same group, you could also have Will Howard, Kyle McCord, Riley Leonard. I think Jalen Milroe was off the board. Tyler Shuck was off the board. So if you like one of those guys better, just in your mind, plug him in here. That's not the purpose. I'm not here to tell you which quarterback the Seahawks should take. That's the guy that I think is most likely because of the connections to John Schneider, of which I detailed in another episode. Make you watch that instead of re-explaining it. I just think that he's a guy that Schneider's going to like. But if you prefer another one, put him in there as well. And then let's see what happens after that. So we miss out on Darius Alexander. We do get Femi Oladejo at 92, a guy that I think screams Seahawks, and I could see him being one of those guys that John Schneider drafts and then says afterwards, we weren't going to come out of the draft without that guy. I've heard him say that about players before, right? He's a converted off-ball linebacker to edge. He's an athletic freak. His motor runs hot all the time. He is just scratching the surface of what he can be as an edge player. He was outstanding at the Senior Bowl. He had 2 tackles for loss and 2 sacks in the game. And they call him the Mayor, I think. I think that's his nickname, because he's just like, you watch an interview with this guy, and I'm going to do a show next week on the top 10 prospects in this draft that scream Seahawks from an interview-only perspective. He's one of them. Like, go find interviews with him, and you'll see what I mean. You'll go, oh, yeah. If they have a chance to draft him, they're going to draft him. Then at 137, I go Ty Robinson. Not a bad consolation prize for not getting Darius Alexander at 82. Ty Robinson is a guy that can play inside and outside. Just really surprised me and impressed me with his strength at the point of attack and his athleticism at the Senior Bowl. And then he went to the Combine and looked a lot more twitchy than I expected him to be. He's just a rock solid player. Very similar to the last draft in kind of Jack Sawyer-ish. Just he's going to bring his lunch pail to work every day and go to work. Good complementary player to what else they have on the defensive line there. Noel Williams, long quarterback out of California, who's got a bunch of experience and a bunch of production. Got to add a cornerback in this draft, right? You have to. Who knows what's going to happen with Reek Woolen in the future? Then there's Clay Webb again, right? Told you he was one of my favorites. There he is again at 175. And then instead of Conyers went Jackson Hawes, who his upside might be limited in the passing game, although we thought that about A.J. Barner last year too. But he's the best blocker in this class. He's such a good blocker that I think if you put 50 pounds on him, you might be able to make a left tackle out of him. Like he is nasty, nasty, nasty inline blocker. And then Jalen Travis again at 234. So let's compare the two. Okay. Tried to keep them as similar as I could to try to illustrate the exercise. So number one was with a quarterback. And then we go Femi Oladejo, Ty Robinson, Noel Williams, Clay Webb, Jackson Hawes, Jalen Travis. Number two is no quarterback. So you get Darius Alexander at 82 instead of Quinn Ewers. And then you go Kobe Bryant instead of Noel Williams, Jalen Conyers instead of Jackson Hawes, Clay Webb, Jalen Travis still, and you pick up a third down running back there as well. What do you think? Like, which one do you prefer? You know, I honestly, and I don't want to influence your opinion too much because I want to see the comments. I want to get some debate going. I really want to know what you guys think of this. I went into this exercise thinking it was going to look a little bit more dramatically worse when you take a quarterback in the third round. But I think the way it fell, like, I'm not so sure that I don't like number one better because I'm that in love with Femi Oladejo and Ty Robinson. I think it worked out really, really well to be able to get those guys. So I guess I kind of gave away what my vote would be. I think I might lean one, even though going into this, I thought I might like the one without a quarterback better. What do you guys think? That's all that matters, right? Tell me what you think. One or two, with a quarterback or without. To QB or not to QB. I'm going to coin that phrase. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch how that unfolds during the draft, which, by the way, we're almost a month out now, so go ahead and start teasing this. My plan is to do live watch parties on day 1 and 2. Third day, you know, it just drags on so long, and they don't really focus on the picks as much, and sometimes they go flying by. We'll just kind of hang out together on Twitter for that one, right? At Seahawks Forever. But day 1 and 2, live watch parties all throughout. I was just going to do day 1, but, you know, they have 4 picks now on day 2. So, you know, 5 in the top 92. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's get into it. I'm Dan. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Hit that bell for notification of future episodes. And all the other ways that you can support me and the show are listed down below in the description. Enjoy this episode. Can't wait for your feedback. Until next time, forever and always go Hawks.